Hey, it's Stu, and I'm your extremely enabled book hauler. um, because this is my weekly book haul, and it's not as unhinged as the last one, but it's still quite a bit of books. So let me set the scene. I went to County Library's pop-up book sale. It was fantastic. It was a bit competitive, and there weren't a whole lot of books there that I was interested in. And I didn't want to compete with anyone else over like grabbing a much sought after book in any case. But I was able to come away with $5 for $5 and contribute. I really appreciate that. County Library is one of my favorite libraries. And to chat with everybody that was waiting in line, etc. It was a fantastic experience. My focus was books that have adaptations because I've been kind of like on the DL reading books with adaptations. So I may or may not read these books. I kind of going to keep them in a sub pile of basically reader on haul before a set date, like a month or so. The first is In the Dark, Dark Woods by Ruth Ware. This would go on Mystery Thriller anyway, and I might have a spot, or I would pull something off to give it a spot. Really like the cover of this book. It's been made into a movie, and I believe the movie had streamed on Netflix or something. I don't get any streaming services, so I have to, it has to be like a friend night at a place with people who do stream, and I can say, oh, you know what I'd like to watch. The next book that I got was Taylor Jenkins Reid's Daisy Jones and the Six. I know people are going to say, didn't you unhaul all of your Taylor Jenkins Reid earlier this year? Indeed, I did. It was some of her backlist. Daisy Jones and the Six wasn't in it. And TJR is a fine author. I just felt that other people liked her probably a lot more than me. And as I'm more of a literary fiction reader and don't really like celebrity as to explore celebrity, that I'd let her go. That being said, this is, I think, Amazon Prime stream, and if I can get to this, great. Classics. I got a couple classics to add to the pile. One is Jane Austen's Persuasion. Of the adaptations that come to mind, it's the 2022 one, I believe. Also, maybe Netflix, right? I have another more vintage, lovely old, like antique edition of this. So if I can get to reading this sooner, maybe Women's History Month, Jane Austen's a great time to read that, and find someone with whom to watch the adaptation, I will let this version go back. Either way, actually. And then finally, A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess. I just recently found another book by his. It made me remember this book and adaptation, and I wonder if I'll have any patience for its gratuitous violence, particularly against women, and the misogyny that it portrays. But if I should happen to find the right situation to read this book, here it is, and or someone with whom to watch the adaptation. So I've been reading adaptations because, like I said, there's been I think I've said, let me repreface, and maybe I've said in previous videos, there's been, at my friends at the library, a display that said the book is better. So I've been trying to unhaul at least one book per week into that. So again, kind of DL reading books that make adaptations. And before that, I was traveling to Oregon to stay with a friend who doesn't read at all, but is a cinephile, and so I had read a bunch of books that had adaptations before that. So it's kind of an ongoing trend for me. Again, I don't think these are not going to get shelved in my stacks. These are going to stay in kind of a substack with a read by date. I also got The Paper Palace by Miranda Cowley Heller. Heavy on the Grease books this book sale was. I thought this had an adaptation. I think there was an adaptation through HBO in the works, but I don't know anymore. This seems like a really popular book that isn't necessarily for me. So again, this will stay in that pile in any case, which is will self-destruct by a certain day, meaning will go into either that display at my friends at the library or Little Free Libraries. I think all of those books are someone would be happy to find in a Little Free Library. These next books are short story collections, and I've been really picking up steam on short story collections, and all three of these I'm really excited about. One is Rue by Kim Thuy. I talked about this book with a friend who wants it when I'm done. It has all the things: deckled edges, French laps, and a beautiful embossment, and obviously won some Canadian Reads Awards. And oh, this is actually translated. It should have been my last one, by Sheila. Oh yeah, from the French. And this is a very known and prolific translator, Sheila Fishman. Yes. The next short story book is called The Boat by Nam Le. This is also a Vietnamese. So that is a Kim Thuy, I believe, is the Vietnamese diaspora French Canadian, and Nam Le is Vietnamese Australian, writing. I believe the intention of all of these short stories of this book is the immigrant and Vietnamese diaspora experience across the world. So we have stories in Iran, we have stories in South America, and literally across the globe. In this, I have a friend that also has this book, and so we have it set up for a buddy read to be determined. All the Names They Used for God by Anjali Satjavida. I don't know anything about this book. I don't even know anything about the premise of this book, but it's blurbed by both Roxane Gay, whose short story collection Difficult Women was probably my favorite short story collection ever, and coming in and not distant from that is Carmen Maria Machado's short story collection. They took the time to give a really heartfelt blurb for this book, and so I'm very interested. I have a lot of places my mind goes for all the names they use for God, but we shall see. We shall see. This is one of those, like, maybe the one that I'm most enthused, one of the ones I'm most enthused about, and I might read it sooner rather than later. Next, I'm going to go into books in translation. I am a sucker for those books in translation. The first one has a caveat. So it's Beartown by Fredrik Backman, and the translator of this is Neil Smith. If you've been watching my videos, you know that I recently unhauled Without Reading the Winners because it was the third of the Beartown trilogy, and I hadn't found the other first two, and I didn't believe that I could. So I found this soon after. Well, actually, I found Anxious People like that same day. And I said, okay, great. I've replaced, there's a space for a Bachman book on, my top shelf there. Here's what happened. Here's what's up. I went back to my neighborhood library, which I had filled up with books because it had been cleaned out. And I picked another book that I read, Unhauled Without Reading, and I traded back. I actually traded back for The Winners by Fredrik Backman. So now I'm just in search of book 2. If I read Beartown and I don't like it, I can also just go back to reading without, unhauling without reading this one. But I kind of felt like it was a bit kismet, finding Beartown again. Let me also add a sad tale that my neighborhood's Little Free Library has been completely wiped out again. So I don't know. Maybe thoughts for another video. The most spectacular find, I think, of this entire, well, maybe year, is The Vegetarian by Han Kang. I found this at the Friends of the Library. My son got me a Han Kang for the holidays, because I have this is an author that I'm very familiar with and I haven't read yet. And it's really The Vegetarian that I'm most familiar with and wanted to read. And I just thought, okay, some just aren't going to make it. This is such a beloved author that people won't donate that book. Here it is. I'm so excited to read it. And right now, like this week, they're going to announce the long list for International Booker. And this was the inaugural International Booker winner in 2016. So I shall be reading this book very soon because it's that anticipated of a find. Other ones that I don't know much about: Born of No Woman by Frank Boyes. Who's the translator? Laura. Oh my gosh, too many shadows. Okay, Laura, I'm sorry, I can't see her because of this contrast. Vingard, I think. Yeah. Gothic. That's all I got about this. This is a Gothic retelling. Fantastic cover. Loved the cover. Sometimes books in translation I haul. You know, this is a $3 book, so I have a limit, but I haul if I find a book in translation, and that's what happened there, even though I should be kind of calming down a little. Exciting. I found this Carlos Fuentes Ahora, and you can see there's already a bookmark because I did a buddy read, a read out loud with a friend that's studying Spanish. That friend, he's been mentioned before in my videos, and I was like, look what I found, let's read it. So we're already into it, and yeah, that's all I have to say about Ahora by Carlos Fuentes. Another Mexican author. Oh, who's the translator? Come on, dude. Like, I'll play both parts today. I hear the crowd say, who's the translator? Lysander Kemp. Another book in another Mexican book in translation for which there is no Spanish. So this one has both Spanish and English. Great for my friend who's learning Spanish. This one I'd actually love to find in Spanish, but don't know if I will. There's no digital or audio version of this, so this I'll have to read with my eyeballs. Super excited about the premise. Would love to find, you know, maybe next year I'll make it to Mexico and I'll get this Fabio Morabito book in the Spanish, and several other Mexican authors who I just really, really want to get my hands on. That's another video. This is home reading service. I realize I just kind of been going through books without giving premise. Otherwise, this will be a really long video. I usually do the premise in TBR, and then I kind of stopped doing TBR. But the really basic synopsis of this book is this young man has gotten himself into some kind of trouble. He's found some trouble, or trouble found him, and he's on community service, and he has to read to the elderly as part of his community service. So what I anticipate happening is this intergenerational friendship, this coming to value the wisdom of elders, and this discovery of oneself and the greater world through literature. Super excited for this book. We'll see if it delivers. I feel like I'm going to end up reading it sooner rather than later too. Another book I'm super excited about is Kaigo Higashino's The Devotion of Suspect X. Here we have a woman who's protecting her daughter, and she's going to all lengths. I think that's what's up. Let me tell you who the translator is. It's not on the front. I gotta page in and see if the shadows over here will help me. Oh yeah, by Alexander O. Smith and Ailey J. Alexander. This goes on mystery thriller. Super anticipated to read this book. I don't know, I just feel like Women's History Month could be the kickoff of this book too. Speaking of books that maybe there's some anticipation around, yeah. I almost didn't get this, and then I had a very long conversation with shall we say, an Anuradha Roy fangirl who really wanted to talk to me about Mother Mary Comes to Me, which she's about to read because it's about to come off hold for this woman from her Libby, and she's read this one. I've not read this one, and I have another, The Ministry of Utmost Happiness, that I believe was a women's prize longlister, and I thought, you know what, let me read that first, and then this should come back to me. I should see this again. And through the insistence of this woman at the Friends of the Library book sale, in a long conversation, I end up getting an Atlas of Impossible Longing. What a fantastic title. This book can sit on my shelf for a very long time. It won't get on hold without read, because it's an author I can look forward to. Call Baby by Morgan Jenkins. I found it in a little free library, and it has to do with fertility, motherhood, and community. That's all I got for you on that one. Welcome to Braggsville by T. Geronimo Johnson. Has to do with the protagonist is from the heart of Dixie, it says in the description, and then goes to school at UCLA and is kind of like a culture shock. Yeah, I feel like LA to me is kind of a bit of a culture shock, and I kind of really like this sort of modern tellings of folks that are coming from other places in the US and then going to these really well-known major cities such as LA. So welcome to Braggsville. I think this it's gonna have some sort of like classism or elitism in it as well. We shall see. Carmen and Grace by Melissa Costa-Aquino. Melissa Costa-Aquino is Puerto Rican diaspora in New York, and Carmen and Grace explores two characters who are drug mules. They're cousins, and they are drug mules. And one wants to get the F out, and the other wants to move up in the company and gain more power and prestige. So it's going to be interesting to see both a family dynamic and how people get in and out of something such as drug trafficking. That leads me to another author that I have read before, and so I just decided to haul it because I thought, I thought that Take My Hand was a decent book. So Delene Perkins Valdez, telling stories, historical fiction about Black women that should be told, that need to be told. She's definitely an uncoverer of stories. And so I don't know the premise of Happy Land, but knowing enough about this author, I decided to grab it. Likewise, in historical fiction, I got Lakewood by Megan Giddens. This is Lakewood is in Michigan, and this is historical fiction, which kind of is reminding me about Delene Perkins Valdez and Take My Hand, of medical malpractice, medical experimentation on Black bodies. Curious. Yeah. Along the lines of more historical fiction, The Killer and Frank Lloyd Wright by Casey Sherman. What do I have to say about Frank Lloyd Wright? I mean, the Simon and Garfunkel song, and I have several friends who are architects that I could maybe talk. I feel like there's going to be some Frank Lloyd Wright-isms in this book that could be interesting. The little subtitle up here, if we could say, is The True Story of Mass Murder in Paradise, and I couldn't help myself. I thought, what, the colonization of any island nation? Anyway, we shall see. This is an ARC. It doesn't come out until May, and therefore I'm going to have to read it physically. It is quite small fonted, so if I think about it some more and don't feel compelled, it's a great unhaul without reading back into the little free library ecosystem. Finally, I have some books by authors from the other side of the Pacific. I was super excited to find Stoneyard Devotional by Charlotte Wood. It's been super hyped, and I was wondering why I just hadn't really seen it around. We just don't see those Aussie authors much in the US. So finding it at the Friends of the Library with, like, I found The Vegetarian, and then this, like, bing bang, like I can see new arrivals from all the way across the building, I swear. Was super excited to find it. Shortlisted for the 2024 Booker, but I do believe I will get to it before Booker season. And then finally, Women's Prize for Fiction. I thought she was Aussie, but I think I was misinformed. She's New Zealand, which makes me even more excited. And this is Meg Mason. She was short or longlisted for Women's Prize for Fiction. That's how I was familiar with the name. For Sorrow and Bliss. And You Be Mother. There was another also book by her. It must have been the same donor. And I chose You Be Mother. I liked reading a little bit of the synopsis in the back and the front more. And I thought, well, if I can read at least a few chapters of this and like it, I'll grab the other book by Meg Mason next time I go to the Friends of the Library, because it's kind of hidden. And I don't know how many people would be familiar with her. And this is a UK. This is not a US edition, so I don't even know if it's been published in the US. I didn't look it up. Sometimes when I see those kinds of situations, I decide to grab it even without knowing that much, because I have a chance now to give her a chance in the physical form. So, and then once I'm done and I like her or not, get it out there to friends, fellow readers, and or little free libraries so other people can also give her a chance. That is a lot of books, I know, but I got a lot of plans for them and I know where they're all fitting perfectly. And so it doesn't feel at all unhinged. Yeah, sure. Ongoing goal to just kind of dial it back a little because it feels like I kind of ramped up lately. But I've also just been having a spectacular time. So let me leave on a positive note and we'll check in again next week to see if I have been able to dial it down without feeling like I'm missing out.